The Pacific island of Iwo Jima is only 8 square miles, yet the battle for it proved to be one of the bloodiest of World War II. It was 70 years ago this week that American forces finally captured Iwo Jima from dug-in Japanese forces after weeks of fighting and thousands of lives lost.
On February 19th, 1945, during the final months of World War II, the U.S. military sent 30,000 Marines to a small volcanic island called Iwo Jima. Their mission was simple: take the island from Japan. They expected a hard fight, but it was a trap. That island was hollow. Japan had built something no army had ever seen before: 11 miles of tunnels, over 1,500 hidden rooms, all carved into the rock by hand. And inside those tunnels, 21,000 Japanese soldiers were waiting in the dark. And each one had one job: kill 10 Americans before dying. When the Marines stepped onto the beach, there was no gunfire, no bombs, nothing. Just silence. That silence was part of the plan, and when it ended, the next 36 days became the bloodiest battle in U.S. Marine Corps history. This is the full story of what happened above and below the surface of Iwo Jima during World War II, and why the soldiers who went into those tunnels never talked about it again. By early 1945, the United States had been fighting across the Pacific for over 3 years, island by island: Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, Guam, each one taken at enormous cost. Each one brings American forces closer to Japan. From those captured islands, massive B-29 bombers were already flying missions toward the Japanese mainland. But every single one of those bombers had to fly directly over Iwo Jima to reach Japan. And Iwo Jima was a Japanese stronghold. By Japanese radar detected incoming bombers hours before they reached their targets. Fighter planes launched from the island and attacked them mid-flight. Dozens of B-29s were shot down or crippled. Others limped back across the ocean with dead engines and dying crews, nowhere to land for hundreds of miles. The math was simple. Without Iwo Jima, America kept losing bombers on every mission. With Iwo Jima, America controlled the sky all the way to Tokyo. There was no alternative. The island was the bottleneck. Either America took it or kept paying for it in planes and pilots every single day. But Japan understood this just as clearly. And months before the first American ship appeared on the horizon, one man had already decided exactly how this battle would be fought. Not on the beaches, not on the surface, underground. The man who built a death machine. Guys, hit like and subscribe because it really helps us to reach more people. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi arrived on Iwo Jima in June 1944, 8 months before the invasion. He was not a typical Japanese commander. He had lived in the United States. He had traveled across America by car. He had visited American factories and watched how American industry worked. He understood better than almost anyone in the Japanese military exactly what kind of enemy was coming, and he knew with absolute certainty that Iwo Jima could not be held. He also knew he was never going home. He wrote letters to his wife and young children back in Japan. In one, he told his son to take care of his mother. In another, he told his wife not to expect him to return. He sealed those letters knowing he was building his own grave. But his death was not the point. The cost was the point. If this tiny island killed enough Americans, the United States might hesitate before invading Japan itself. Every dead Marine on Iwo Jima was a down payment on Japan's survival. Kuribayashi was not building a defense. He was building a machine designed to turn Japanese lives into American casualties at the highest possible rate. Tokyo wanted beach defenses, trenches along the waterline, heavy guns aimed at the sea. Kuribayashi rejected all of it. He had watched what happened when Japanese forces tried to stop American landings at the beach throughout the Pacific. Naval guns destroyed them before the Marines even got wet. It was a waste of men and a waste of time. As he gave an order that stunned his own officers: abandon the beaches, move everything inland, go underground, let the Americans land without a fight, let them crowd onto the beach with their equipment and their tanks, let them think the shelling worked, then open fire from positions they cannot see and cannot reach. Make them fight for every single inch, and when they think they have won a position, hit them again from the tunnels behind it. What followed was 8 months of construction that nearly killed the men building it before the battle even started. Japanese soldiers carved more than 11 miles of tunnels into volcanic rock using hand tools. picks, shovels, bare hands when the tools broke. The tunnels ran as deep as 90 feet underground. They connected over 1,500 rooms, bunkers, gun positions, command centers, and hospitals into one interconnected fortress. The conditions inside were almost unsurvivable. The volcanic rock radiated constant heat. Temperatures reached 120 degrees. Toxic sulfur gases seeped from the stone, burning lungs and eyes. There was almost no fresh water, almost no clean air. Men worked in short shifts wearing gas masks. Soldiers collapsed from heat exhaustion daily. Some died from the fumes before a single American bullet was ever fired. Kuribayashi pushed them without mercy. On February 11, 1945, he set a deadline. All construction was to be finished. 8 days later, the Americans would arrive. From the air, Iwo Jima looked like a dead, empty rock. Black sand, volcanic craters, nothing moving. The Americans had spent 3 days shelling it. Thousands of bombs had torn the surface apart. Intelligence officers believed resistance would be light, maybe a few days of fighting. Beneath that shattered surface, 21,000 men sat in darkness with their guns aimed at coordinates that had been measured down to the meter months in advance. The beaches were marked. When the killing zones were plotted, the trap was set. All they had to do was wait. The morning, everything changed. February 19th, 1945. Before dawn, the Navy opened fire one last time. Then, the landing craft moved in. At 8:59 a.m., the first wave of Marines hit the beaches. Nearly 30,000 men came ashore in the opening hours. They stepped onto the black volcanic sand and immediately started sinking. The ash was loose and soft. Every step went ankle deep. Men carrying heavy packs could barely walk forward. Tanks bogged down. Equipment piled up along the waterline. And for several long minutes, nothing happened. No gunfire, no mortar rounds, no defenders. Just the sound of boots sinking into sand. Some Marines thought the island was empty. Some thought the bombardment had killed everyone. A few felt something wrong in their gut, but could not explain it. That feeling was correct. The Kuribayashi watched through hidden observation posts as thousands of men and hundreds of vehicles crowded onto the narrow beaches. He waited until the shore was so packed that every shell would land in a crowd. Then he gave the order. The island exploded. Every hidden gun opened fire at the same instant. Artillery shells landed on the beach with pinpoint accuracy from positions that were supposed to be destroyed. Mortars dropped into the packed crowds of men. And machine guns fired from concrete bunkers buried under feet of volcanic rock that the naval bombardment had not even scratched. Mount Suribachi erupted with gunfire from every hidden position on its slopes. Marines were hit from the front, from both sides, and from behind. There was no single direction of attack, no clear enemy line. Bunkers that appeared destroyed came alive. Positions that had been silent seconds earlier opened fire. Men standing next to each other disappeared in a single explosion. The beach turned into a killing ground. Behind them was the ocean. In front of them was an island full of invisible guns. Beneath them was a fortress they did not know existed. In the first minutes, entire squads were wiped out. By the end of the first day, casualties were in the thousands. The 3-day battle that intelligence had predicted was not even close to starting. It would last 36 days. And the worst part had not begun. The war beneath the ground. For the first 2 weeks, the fighting stayed above ground. Marines pushed inland toward the airfields and the high ground. Every ridge was defended. Every hill hid guns. Every piece of ground that was taken cost blood. But the Marines were experienced fighters. They had been across the Pacific. Slowly, painfully, they advanced. Then they started noticing something that made no sense. Positions they had cleared were firing again. Named bunkers that had been destroyed came back to life. Enemies appeared behind American lines in areas that had been secured for days. The tunnels. Japanese soldiers were using the underground network to move invisibly beneath the battlefield. When a surface position was overrun, the defenders withdrew through a tunnel, traveled underground, and came up somewhere else. A bunker destroyed at noon could be reoccupied by evening. Ground cleared in the morning could kill you at night. When Marines first entered the tunnels, the losses came immediately. The passages were narrow, pitch dark, and suffocatingly hot. Sulfur fumes burned the throat. Around every turn, Japanese soldiers waited in hidden chambers. Gunfire came from behind. Grenades rolled out of openings that could not be seen. Machine guns appeared at positions that did not exist moments earlier. There were no rules of combat underground, no front line, no way to know what was around the next corner. The darkness was total, the heat was crushing, and the enemy knew every inch of the maze because they had built it with their own hands. Within days, commanders stopped sending men into the tunnels. The casualties were unsustainable. A new strategy was adopted. If you cannot go in, seal it shut. M4 Sherman flamethrower tanks rolled forward under covering fire. Marines called them Zippos. They blasted streams of liquid fire directly into tunnel entrances. The flames consumed the oxygen inside. Heat drove deep into the passages. Smoke filled the connected chambers. Then came the explosives. Grenades and satchel charges were pushed into the openings and detonated, collapsing the entrances and sealing entire sections of the network permanently. The process was agonizingly slow. Days to neutralize a single position, sometimes weeks, but it worked. By mid-March, the underground network was breaking down. Supplies inside had run out. Wounded men lay in total darkness with no medicine. Fewer attacks came from behind American lines. The fortress was dying from the inside, but nobody surrendered, not one organized unit, not one white flag. And the reason for that silence was not bravery in the way most people understand bravery. It was something darker, what it meant to follow the order. Picture this. You are a Japanese soldier inside a tunnel on Iwo Jima. It is mid-March 1945. You have been underground for weeks. The temperature around you is 120 degrees. The air is thick with sulfur. Every breath burns your throat. You have not had clean water in days. The man next to you was wounded a week ago. His wounds are infected. There is no medicine. There is no doctor. He is dying slowly, and there is nothing you can do about it. Above you, you can hear the rumble of American tanks rolling over the rock. You can hear explosions as they sealed the tunnel entrances one by one. You can hear the roar of flamethrowers, and you can smell what comes after. You know the island is almost gone. You know the battle is lost. You know you are going to die in this tunnel, but the order says wait. Do not charge. Do not rush out. Do not throw your life away in a dramatic last stand. That is what Japanese soldiers had done throughout the Pacific. Mass banzai charges with bayonets and battle cries. Spectacular and completely pointless. Kuribayashi had watched American machine guns cut those charges to pieces in minutes. And every man who died in a banzai charge was a man who could have killed 5 or 10 more Americans by staying hidden and fighting from the dark. So the order was the opposite of everything the Japanese military had practiced for the entire war. Stay hidden. Stay patient. Strike only when the moment is right. Withdraw through the tunnels. Wait in the darkness. Kill carefully. Die only when there is nothing left to give. Some men followed that order for weeks, sitting in heat that made their skin blister, breathing air that was slowly poisoning them, listening to the world above them being destroyed piece by piece, knowing that every tunnel entrance being sealed was one fewer way out, knowing that eventually there would be no way out at all. They did not break. They did not surrender. They sat in the dark and they waited for one more chance to fight, not because they wanted to, because the order said so, because the math said so. Or because a general who had already written goodbye letters to his children believed that their slow, patient deaths could save their country. For the Marines above, this was a nightmare without end. There was no breaking point, no moment when the enemy crumbled, no white flags, no negotiations. Just an enemy that kept fighting from below the ground, one soldier at a time, until every single one of them was dead. The night before, victory. On March 26, 1945, both the United States officially declared Iwo Jima secure, but that word meant almost nothing on the ground. Intelligence estimated that roughly 3,000 Japanese soldiers were still alive somewhere on the island. The most violent moment of the entire battle came the night before the declaration. On March 25th, approximately 300 Japanese soldiers emerged silently from a fortified ravine the Americans called the Gorge. This was not a banzai charge. There were no screams, no battle cries. They moved through the darkness without a sound, carrying knives and pistols. They reached airfield number 2 and slipped into the camp where American troops were sleeping. They attacked men in their tents. More than 100 Americans were killed or wounded before the assault was finally stopped. It was the last organized attack of the battle, and it happened the night before the island was declared won. General Kurabayashi is believed to have died during or shortly after this attack. His body was never recovered. He had stripped off his rank insignia before the assault and fought as an ordinary soldier. The man who had written goodbye letters to his children, who had built 11 miles of tunnels with his bare will, who had turned a volcanic rock into the most expensive 8 square miles in military history, died in the dark without a name, exactly as he planned. The ghosts that never left. The battle ended, but Iwo Jima did not go quiet. Rather than send more men into the remaining tunnels, American forces sealed them. Bulldozers collapsed entrances. Explosives buried entire passageways. Whole sections of the underground network were permanently entombed, sometimes with Japanese soldiers still alive inside. In 1984, construction workers accidentally reopened a former naval hospital tunnel. Inside, they found the mummified remains of 54 Japanese soldiers exactly where they had fallen 39 years earlier. Some still held medical supplies, others clutched sack bottles. They had been sealed in darkness since 1945. Nobody knew they were there. For years after the battle, Japanese holdouts continued to emerge from the earth. They startled American personnel who believed the island had been pacified long ago. The final known surrender came on January 6, 1949. 2 soldiers, Yamakage Kufuku and Matsudo Linsoki, walked out of the caves nearly 4 years after Japan's official defeat. 4 years. They had survived by hiding underground during the day and coming out at night to steal food and water from American supply dumps. When they surrendered, they were described as clean and well-fed. Proof that a secret underground war had continued in total silence long after the world believed it was over. The final count. Nearly 6,800 Americans dead. Over 26,000 total American casualties. Of the 21,000 Japanese defenders, almost all were killed. Fewer than 1,100 were ever captured. In 2010, researchers used wartime maps to locate mass graves near Mount Suribachi, containing up to 2,200 bodies. Visitors who enter the accessible tunnels today describe walls that are still warm to the touch, and a silence so heavy it feels like weight pressing down on your chest. An island 8 square miles in size, 11 miles of tunnels carved into volcanic rock by hand, 36 days of the most intense fighting in Marine Corps history, and a general who wrote goodbye letters to his children and then spent 8 months building his own grave so that his death and the deaths of 21,000 men under his command would cost the enemy enough to change the course of the war. It worked. The American generals planning the invasion of Japan looked at the casualty numbers from this tiny island and did the math. If 8 square miles cost 26,000 casualties, what would an entire country cost? That single calculation fed directly into the decision to drop atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, rather than send American soldiers onto the Japanese mainland. One small island, one underground fortress, one decision to die slowly. And the ripple from that decision changed the end of the war and the beginning of the nuclear age. The next time you see that famous photograph of 6 Marines raising the flag on Mount Suribachi, remember what was beneath their feet. 11 miles of tunnels, all thousands of men in the dark, and a battle that was nowhere close to over when that flag went up. Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you have a family member who served in the Pacific, tell us what they shared with you. Hit that like button if this changed how you understand the cost of war. And subscribe, because the real history is always the story they never put on screen. And we are just getting started.